Anytime I do a Call of Duty Zombies video, I have PTSD. And if you know, you know. If not, I'm not going to explain it to you. But here we are again. Call of Duty Zombies has changed a lot over the years. What started as a simple bonus mode in World at War eventually became one of the biggest parts of the Call of Duty franchise. We've gone from 4 players trapped in a small room, fighting increasingly ridiculous numbers of zombies, to enormous maps. Character progression, storylines, crafting, loadouts, currencies, all of that. So today, I want to look at the 10 worst features ever added to Call of Duty Zombies. And look, you guys know I'm not their #1 authority on zombies. I don't ever claim to be. I was the guy that uploaded perhaps the most hated video in COD Zombies history, but I don't think that counts. But I do have my ear on the pulse of the community. And I think this time around, I'm going to make you proud. Welcome to the channel, everybody. Jimmy here, Chaos. At number 10, exfil. Now, eventually you decide you're done with the game, right? And instead of simply quitting the game, you call in an extraction and you would try to escape. I think that's a decent idea on paper. The problem is, Call of Duty Zombies typically ends one way. You die. No victory screen, no extraction. You just survive until you can't survive anymore, or you reach the end of the game. It's one or the other. I mean, that's why exfil is a bizarre thing to add to the game because, well, the game is now asking you, hey, do you want to be done? Hey, do you want to go home? That sounds like a vibe killer. For the experience, if you can just leave the mission before it's finished, it just feels disconnected from what usual zombies experiences are, because the usual zombie experience has you trapped and fighting for your life. But if you can just leave, why were you there in the first place? At number 9, don't hate me, Gobblegums. Black Ops 3 introduced one of the most controversial additions to zombies, I think. Gobblegums. Consumable power-ups, right? Gave players temporary abilities. All of you zombies are very familiar. Zombie players, that is. Not zombies. Some were harmless. Others were powerful. Then there was the Mega Gobblegums, which could fundamentally change an entire match. You could get free perks, extra points, extra weapons, extra pack-a-punch abilities. Heck, I think you could even manipulate the mystery box or revive teammates in a way that normally wasn't possible. Gobblegums wasn't necessarily bad because they were powerful. They were bad because they changed what zombies rewarded you for doing. Classic Zombies was largely about learning the map. You had to manage your resources. You had to survive. Gobblegums introduced an entirely new layer of strategy, and some Gobblegums were so powerful that they could trivialize parts of the experience. If you had the right setup, you could get yourself out of situations that would have been impossible in earlier games. Some say Gobblegums were put in for little Timmy. I didn't say it. Don't kill the messenger. But it did introduce a resource management system into a mode that I don't know if it needed it. At number 8, armor. Another mechanic that makes perfect sense when you look at modern Call of Duty, but it makes significantly less sense to me when you look at classic zombies. Black Ops Cold War introduced armor as a core part of the player's survivability. So instead of us simply relying on your health and juggernog, we now have armor protecting us from incoming damage, but that also created what I deem to be a problem. For 10 plus years, zombies had a very simple damage system. You get hit, you lose health, you eventually die. Armor adds a whole nother layer between you and death, and that doesn't sound particularly bad until you realize what it does to the entire flow of the game. Zombies become less about avoiding damage and more about managing your armor. Because armor can be upgraded, repaired, and replenished, it kind of became another resource that players constantly had to think about. I mean, this is one of those features that isn't necessarily bad by itself, but I feel like the problem is that it contributed to a much larger trend in modern zombies. Instead of learning how to survive, you learn how to manage systems. And at some point, you started wondering whether you're playing zombies or playing a budget version of Escape from Tarkov. I know I'm gonna get some heat today. At number 7, score streaks. Classic zombies. If you wanted to kill a large group of zombies, you had to earn it. You needed a powerful weapon, a good position, maybe a trap, maybe a wonder weapon. You know the drill. The Cold War basically said, what if you could just call in an attack helicopter? And suddenly zombies had artillery, sentry guns, airstrikes, every other powerful kill streak style equipment you could think of. Again, they could be fun, but they fundamentally kind of alter the power curve, don't they? I mean, there is something satisfying about reaching a high round because you master the game's mechanics, but there is something slightly less satisfying about reaching a difficult situation and responding by ordering an attack helicopter to solve your problem. This wasn't even completely necessary. Zombies already had a massive arsenal of unique weapons and equipment. The mode didn't need to borrow another system from multiplayer. I thought it already had it figured out how to make players feel powerful. It just needed to let them keep doing it. At number 6, open world zombies. Modern Warfare 3 took zombies in a different direction entirely. Instead of being trapped inside a traditional zombies map, we were now dropped into a huge open world environment. There's some genuinely cool ideas there. The problem is, it barely resembles traditional zombies to me. Classic zombies is built around a specific map. You learn the layout, you open the doors, you activate the power, you find the pack-a-punch, you discover secrets. You even learn the best training spots, and eventually you master the environment. Modern Warfare 3 Zombies replaces a lot of that with an open world structure. You drive around, you complete contracts, you collect loot, you extract for whatever reason, you fight bosses, you upgrade your gear, and then you leave. It was essentially a PvE extraction mode with zombies. It was. And again, that doesn't automatically make it bad, but to me the problem is it's a very different experience. If someone told you in 2011 that one day Call of Duty Zombies would involve driving a truck across a giant map to complete contracts so you could extract with loot, you probably would have assumed they were describing a completely different franchise. I guess the mode can be fun, of course, but it doesn't really feel like Zombies that made the series famous to me. I'm an OG guy. Now we arrive at the top 5. Covenants. Now the basic idea was you could collect hearts and exchange them for different abilities, I think. Some of these could dramatically change how your weapons performed against zombies. I think the problem was that it added yet another layer of complexity to an already complicated progression system. Instead of simply finding a weapon and upgrading it and trying to survive, now I have to evaluate Covenant options. Which one's better? Which weapon benefits from it? Should you spend your hearts now? And I guess this wouldn't necessarily be a problem if the system had been attached to a good zombies experience. But unfortunately, Vanguard Zombies was already struggling. The map design, the progression, the overall identity of it. So the Covenant system kind of became another thing players had to manage without providing much of a reason to care. It was a solution to a problem that most players I don't think had. And when you're playing zombies, I think that's a bad sign. And number 4, perks. This one's going to piss off people. You're going to get angry at me, but Black Ops 4's perk system, I think, was one of the biggest departures from classic Zombies. For years, Zombies had a relatively simple perk system. You knew what the important perks were, and there were other perks that varied depending on the map. It was simple. And Black Ops 4 decided, hey, let's redesign it. So instead of finding a familiar collection of perks around the map, you now chose 4 perks before the game started, which created a whole new problem. You no longer discovered your perks during the match. You planned beforehand. Sounds like a small change. It wasn't. Perks had always been part of the exploration of Zombies. You learn the map, you discover where each perk machine was. Black Ops 4 turned them into a loadout. Now, the classic Juggernaut perk was essentially removed. It was replaced with a different health system. Many of the iconic perks were moved around or replaced, and suddenly, the perk system that had been one of the most recognizable mechanics, it didn't feel like the same system. The developers were trying to encourage experimentation, but instead a lot of players simply wanted the old perks back, and sometimes you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you just need to keep Juggernaut where it belongs. And number 3, Vanguard's objective system. If there's one thing that Vanguard Zombies demonstrated, it's that zombie players don't necessarily want zombies to play like multiplayer. Vanguard leaned heavily into objective-based gameplay. So instead of us surviving on a map, we had to teleport between different areas and complete objectives. You defend locations, escort objectives, complete challenges. Then we return to the hub area and we repeat the process. But the problem was, it destroyed one of the most important things about zombies to me. The flow. Classic Zombies had a rhythm to it. Vanguard frequently interrupted that rhythm with objectives. I mean, it could feel less like surviving a zombie outbreak and more like your manager had assigned you to another task. And the worst part is that objective-based zombies could have worked. There was lots of examples of zombie quests and objectives that were fun. The problem was making the entire experience revolve around it. Zombies didn't need to become an objective-driven multiplayer RPG. It needed to remember why people like zombies in the first place. And number 2, loadouts. This is probably one of the biggest philosophical changes to zombies. For years, you start with nothing. You had to earn it all. You needed points to buy weapons, then you needed to find better equipment, you needed to build your arsenal all throughout the match. Get lucky, and that progression was a huge part of the fun. But then suddenly, you could choose your starting weapon before the game began. And not only that, you could bring in equipment and customize your entire starting setup. That changed the opening minutes of a zombies match. You weren't starting with nothing anymore. You were starting with the weapon you wanted. That created a very different progression system. The other early rounds used to be scary about making difficult decisions. Convenient isn't necessarily better, and one of the best parts of zombies to me was watching your character go from a guy with a pistol and 500 points to a walking nuclear arsenal, but loadouts, they skipped part of that journey. And when you remove the struggle from zombies, you also remove some of the satisfaction that comes with overcoming it, which brings us to number 1 today. No Treyarch. I might be biased here, but I really don't think it was a good idea to let other studios have control of zombies. Yeah, this isn't really a feature, but it's definitely an aspect of the mode that left a pretty heavy impact on things. Aside from Infinite Warfare, I mean, has there been a good zombies mode that's been the same kind of care and love and attention that Treyarch does? I'm not saying Treyarch has always been perfect. Obviously, they haven't. But I can't help but feel like every year that wasn't made by Treyarch felt like a filler. COD World War II, Vanguard, Modern Warfare 3, they all felt like dead years. And then everybody started paying attention again once Treyarch was back at the helm, even if Treyarch was making missteps. That might be a hot take, I just don't think anyone should be in charge of zombies other than Treyarch at this point. I just don't think that anything good comes from it. Then again, my opinion's probably not very valued when it comes to zombies, but I have people every day in the comment section saying make zombies content, so there you go. Hope you guys have a great day. Please still love me.